Marvel's back, baby! Finally, a new movie on the silver screen. I know we've had plenty of series to substitute us, like Winter Soldier and WandaVision, which honestly were both great series in their own right, but due to COVID, the inevitable happened and things got delayed, unfortunately. However, Black Widow was, well, kinda weird in a good way. What do I mean by this? You might be asking yourself. Well, in simple terms, they did a lot of cool things, like including Taskmaster, which is one of the greatest villainous henchmen to grace Marvel Comics. Some people didn't enjoy the inclusion or representation of the Taskmaster in this movie, and honestly, I can see both sides of the coin. In the movie, his lore isn't as deep as the comics. In this movie, he is just a henchman to the people that created the Black Widows. In the comics, he originally is someone that grew up with photogenic memory and was hired by certain organizations to train goons to compete with modern heroes in that time period. However, later in Marvel Comics life, aka when Taskmaster got his own series, we learned that Taskmaster actually inserted himself with the super serum and his photogenic memories were amplified by 1,000,000. But the trade-off was, since he was taking in so much information, he started to lose his old life and memories started to get overwritten with details on missions and moves to combat superheroes. There is even more to his backstory, but this is not a Taskmaster video, and some people forget this is a cinematic universe. Things are going to be different and allows for different stories to be told. Yes, this character is pretty one-dimensional in this movie, but Taskmaster is such a cool villain that having them in the movie was enough for me to go, holy f***, that's Taskmaster! We also had the inclusion of what seems to be the new Black Widow, which I kinda loved. She was a really good actor, and even though you can tell the Russian accent was dropped at times to simplify lines, she was written really well. She had some funny one-liners here and there and some pretty emotional moments, so she gets a gold star from me. Also, going off the end credit scene, I hope her inclusion in the Marvel Cinematic Universe continues to grow, and I'm expecting her in the Hawkeye series, and I cannot wait for that to drop. Honestly, this movie felt more like an introduction to a deeper part of the Marvel world and where Phase 4 might bring us. I love Natasha's backstory, but it kinda had me confused at the beginning of the movie. Like, the story just started weird, maybe because I didn't watch the trailer so I didn't understand it, but eventually you'll notice an actor and be like, oh hey, that's the guy from Stranger Things. It was cool seeing actors from other well-known series starting to become relevant in these Marvel movies. If you didn't know, when Marvel first started with Iron Man, he was just a B-tier hero in the comics. He wasn't really that popular, and Robert Downey Jr. was coming off a few run-ins with the law, so it was a shot in the dark for Marvel when it came to Iron Man 1. And look, what do you know now? We've got one of the biggest film universes of all time, making movies every few months celebrating the stories that comics bring us. The story itself was just Marvel's exaggeration of an action, fast-paced spy adventure movie. It reminded me a bit of Atomic Blonde, which is a movie that follows an American agent trying to extract data for her country. If you haven't watched Atomic Blonde, I highly recommend it. The inclusion of explaining what they do in the Red Room was really nice for people that just follow the cinematic universe. Personally, I don't read comics like that, so to finally get a full-on explanation of what happens to people that go there, it was just nice. I don't know, this movie was just fun. I love seeing Hopper snipe people off a plane and be a typical dad. He just gave me neighborhood crackhead Mr. Incredible vibes. The humor in this movie wasn't horrible either. It follows the Marvel formula that they've been using since Thor Ragnarok. And yes, it could be a little cringy at times, but that's okay because sometimes people say, hey, that's cheesy, stop that you stinky rat. But I say, not bad Marvel, you still got me to blow air through my nose. Also, Jesus, the soundtrack in this movie was amazing. I don't know, the music kind of seemed like opera remixes, but to me, if I was to describe it to anyone, I'd simply put it as if Smash Bros. Brawl music was in a Marvel movie. You know the classic... However, there were some weird things I didn't really seem to enjoy that much. Assuming you watched the movie, you could figure it out easily, but they were going for a Mission Impossible style with this movie, and honestly at some points, it started to look like a Michael Bay movie due to all the explosions. Like, I'm not kidding you, there were literally an explosion every 5 minutes at the end of the movie. Besides that, the CGI in this movie was low-key giving me Black Panther PTSD. You remember the last fight in Black Panther, it was just a little wonky. In this movie, you get a lot of those wonky moments with the CGI, and yes, they do some crazy action scenes that I don't think a lot of people could probably do. It's probably not humanly possible, so CGI had to be used. It's a little weird at first, but you start to get used to it as the movie goes on. And honestly, they did some really insane things, like blow up a skybase that looked like it belonged in BioShock Infinite. Honestly, this movie felt slow at times, but I would give it a solid rating of a 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10. It's not the best Marvel movie, but it's not the worst Marvel movie. And I started to doze off 30 minutes into the movie, but oh boy, did those explosions wake you up. I get it, Marvel. The movie was a 6 out of 10. Let it go. I'm gonna watch the other ones. Bye.